Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to learn CTE in SQL Server. So a CTE is basically a common table expression, which we also call a CTE in short form. So it is a temporary named result set that you can reference within a select, insert, update or delete statement. So CTE is used to manipulate the complex subqueries data and is similar to a derived table. So it is not stored as an object and lasts only for the duration of query. So the CTE query starts with and is followed by the expression name. So in order to view the result set from a CTE, we use a select query with the CTE expression. So let's see this quickly into the action. So here we are going to use these three tables, and let me show the data of these three tables first. So in our first table, which is our sales.staff, we have information related to staff like staff ID, first name, last name, their email ID, phone number, and their manager ID. So if there is a requirement, like if the manager ID is null, then it should show 0, and we need to order our data in by manager ID. Then from the second table, we have data related to orders like order ID, customer ID, and their order date, ship date, store ID, staff ID. So we will use this table in order to create relationship between our third table and first table. So let's see the third table. So our third table is order items. So in this particular table, we have order ID, item ID, product ID, quantity, list price, and discount. So the requirement here is to get data from these three tables where we will have first name, last name as a full name, then manager ID, and then total sales by the first name and last name. So let's see this quickly into the action. So for that, we will create a CTE as we have this complex query, and we need to store our result into this CTE, and then we will fetch the data from the CTE. So we will give this name CTE sales as, so this is the syntax of CTE, and then we will mention the table name which we need. So select. So I need, so for intelligence, first we will define the table name. So our first table is sales.staff, and we will give it an alias of S, and then we need to combine our second table with this first table. So in order to join, we will perform left join here, and since we have staff ID common in both these tables, so we will use staff ID. So left join, then we will specify the table name sales.orders co, and then on s.staff ID equals o.staff ID. So we have joined the second table with this table, and now we have third table from where we can get the sales related data. So here, as you can see, we have order ID in common. So we will perform left join from this table to our second table on the basis of order ID. So let's write the left join query for the third table as well. So left join, then our table name is sales dot order items. Now we will perform left join on. So first we will give it an alias which is I, and we have common here order ID. So I dot order ID equals o dot order ID. So now we have joined our three tables. Now we will specify the column names. So the first condition was here to show the manager ID, and if our manager ID is null, then we should show it as a 0. So for that, we will use coalesce function, and then we will pass our manager ID column. So what it will do, if manager ID will be null, then it will replace it with 0, and if it is not, then it will give the manager ID in result set. So we will pass a column name manager ID. So this is our first column, and then our second column is first name and last name. So we need to combine these two columns and then we'll have to name it as a full name. So we will use concat function here to concat both the columns. So concat first name, then we will give some space, and last name as full name. So this is our second column. Then our third column is, which we need from this table, is list price and quantity. So we need to calculate total sales. So what we will do, we will multiply our quantity into list price. So for that, what we will do is I dot list price into I dot quantity as sales. Okay, so this is our third column, and if we need some other column as well, so we have taken this manager ID, first name, last name, and then suppose we want order ID here as well, you can specify that. So order ID is coming from the second table, so we will give it an alias of O dot order ID. Okay, now we will run this code, which we will pass in our CTE. So first we will run this code, and as you can see here, we have manager ID, full name, order ID, and sales. So we will close the CTE. So we have performed our complex query inside the CTE. Now we will select the necessary column from the CTE. So for that, command is select, and then we need manager ID. So for intelligence, first I will specify the CTE name here from CTE sales. So we need manager ID, then full name, and then sum of sales to calculate total sales by employees. So sum of sales as total sales. So now we have fetched the necessary column from our CTE. Now we have performed an aggregation function here. So we will group by manager ID and the full name. Group by manager ID and full name. So let's run this code first. So as you can see here, we have got the final output where we have manager ID, full name, and then total sales by full name and manager ID. Now we have to sort our manager ID column. So for that, we will write order by manager ID. Now let's run this code again. Yeah, so now we have our records in the sorted order. So our manager ID, so the first ID is 0. So basically 0 is super boss, means there is no manager for this particular entity, then where there is no total sales. Then we have manager ID number 1, and then we have Kali Burgers and their total sales. So what we can do here, order by manager ID and then total sales in descending order. So we will run our code really quick. So now we have got our result in this particular form where sort by manager ID ascending order and then total sales by descending order. So as you can see here, for the manager ID 0, so basically 0 means there is no manager for this particular entity, and the manager ID 0 and the employee Fabiola Jackson has done no sales, and then the employee which comes under this manager ID number 1. So from this manager ID, the maximum sale is done by this employee, which is Maria Copeland, and then Kali Burgers. Moving to the 2, then we have the highest sales done by Kiana Serrano, and likewise. So that's how we can create CTE for the complex query, and then so it lasts for the current scope only. So if we will run only this select condition, then it will not give any output because it does not store in memory. So we need to run it every time with our select condition or any condition we are running, like select, delete, update, anything. We need to first run this CTE and then only we can run other commands with it. So hope you have enjoyed my video. Thank you for watching.